Thank you, colleagues, and welcome members of the gallery and those watching remotely. We're gathered today for the June 22nd, 2026 meeting of the Executive Standing Committee of the Halifax Regional Council. The Halifax Regional Municipality is located in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and traditional lands of the Mi'kmaq people. The municipality acknowledges the Peace and Friendship Treaty signed in this territory and recognizes that we are all treaty people. And with that, we'll move on to item 2, approval of the minutes of May 25, 2026. Is there someone who would like to move by Councillor Hartling, seconded by Councillor Steele? Any discussion on the minutes? Seeing none, all in favor of their adoption, show of hands, please. Didn't quite get enough hands to pass that. There we go. Okay, I think we're good now. But the minutes are adopted. We will move on to item 3, approval of the order of business and approval of additions and deletions. Madam Clerk, is there anything for us today?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, there is a request to consider items 13.2.1 and 13.2.2 before item 13.1.1.
Okay, let me just make a note of that. 13.2.1 and 13.2.2 before 13.1.1. 13.1.1. Okay, thank you very much. So noted. Could I have a motion to approve the amended order of business, please? Councillor Steele, seconded by Councillor White. All in favor, show of hands, please. And the amended order of business is adopted. Thank you. There is item 4. There is no business arising out of the minutes. Item 5, call for declaration of conflicts of interest. Not seeing any. And item 6, there are no motions of reconsideration. Item 7, there are no motions of rescission. Item 8, consideration of deferred business, begins with 8.1, the Youth Advisory Committee Annual Report. And there is a motion to be put on the table here if anyone would like to please do that at 8.1. Councillor Steele, please. Thank you. Oh, I beg your pardon. Okay, yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay. I move that the Executive Standing Committee accept the report dated February 5, 2026.
Seconded by Councillor White. And any discussion, colleagues? Not seeing any. Shall we have the question? It's a hand vote? Okay, then all in favor, of show of hands, please. And that motion is adopted. Thank you very much. Bringing us to item 9, notices of tabled matters, of which there are none. And then item 10, correspondence, petitions, and delegations. Madam Clerk, is there anything for us today?
No correspondence has been received.
Okay, colleagues, any petitions today? Not seeing any. And there, to item 10.3, there are no presentations, bringing us to item 11, public participation. There are no pre-registered speakers to speak at this meeting. However, I will call for 3 times to see if anyone from the gallery would like to come to speak to the standing committee. Would anyone like to speak? And I see a resident approaching. Welcome. If you wouldn't mind stating your name and the community in which you reside, and then the floor is yours.
Thank you, Your Worship. I've just realised I've forgot to put my hearing aids in this morning. I know it's not really the subject for this meeting, but I noticed on the council agenda tomorrow a reference to Dartmouth Common and the Ball Diamond. I want to point, because we can't speak at the council meeting, everybody should be aware that any construction on the Dartmouth Common requires public participation. The staff report references the charter, but she doesn't reference section 66, which refers to the Dartmouth Common. And in there, as I said, any construction requires public consultation. There has been none. I didn't know about the proposed changes to the Ball Diamond until I read the agenda on Friday, and I have to say that it's just over 10 years since my accident in BC, and once I got home, well, actually, right after the operation, I had to walk, and I have to walk every day. So I do about 2 miles. I go in the common twice a day, and I walk past the Ball Diamond, and to make it longer, so that I get in a mile, and then I'll go again in the evening and do that. And I still see people practicing ball on the Ball Diamond, but I don't think that it's a suitable place for cricket. I actually played cricket in the Halifax Common, which is something like 40 years ago, and it wasn't the best place. I don't think it's the right place for a cricket field either. And I went down to where it is in Burnside. What it needs is a proper purpose-built facility which is big enough to meet the growing demand. And in fact, just right next to the Ball Diamond is a pathway, and right next to the pathway is the off-leash dog area. I mean, if the staff had had a consultation other than the school board and 2 other entities, if they'd met with the public would have pointed to them that really it's not the best place, nor is it suitable for a Ball Diamond, for a cricket pitch to go in there. And I'd just like to leave that with you, Your Worship. If you have any questions, perhaps the solicitor could point out the relevant section of the city charter.
Okay, thank you very much. I don't think there's any comment coming from the front of the room here, but sir, we did miss your name. If you wouldn't mind repeating your name for the record so our minutes can be complete.
Pardon?
Yeah, could you repeat your name for the record, please?
Oh, Colin May, M-A-Y, 10 Dahlia Street, Dartmouth.
Thank you very much, Mr. May. Much appreciated. Thank you. Are there any other members of the public who would like to speak? Are there? Oh, yeah. Oh, I beg your pardon. Councillor Daigle-Gammon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Traves, I believe that there was a question that was asked of you. You might have missed it with the conversation that was going on, but Mr. May asked about the Section 66, the relevant part of the charter.
We can take that away and take a look at it. Yeah, okay. There are obligations with respect to the Dartmouth Common that are embedded in the charter. However, this is my understanding, is a conversion of an existing structure into that, and so there is some nuance to it, but we'll take it away.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other members of the public who would like to speak? Any other members of the public who would like to speak? Any other members of the public who would like to speak? Okay, seeing none, we will close the public participation. Thank you for that. And that brings us to item 12, information items brought forward. There are none. And then item 13, reports. And that brings us right to item 13. Oops, we're going to rejig the order as we noted, and we're going to be beginning with item 13.2.1, Accessibility Advisory Committee Annual Report. And I believe we have a presentation by the AAC Chair, Rochelle Minette. Rochelle, welcome, and the floor is yours when you're ready. Oh, actually, colleagues, I think we do want to put a motion on the floor just prior to the presentation, and that is found in the agenda. And I see Councillor Daigle-Gammon, please.
Yeah, put the motion on the floor that the Executive Standing Committee review and approve the Accessibility Advisory Committee 2026-27 work plan.
Seconded by Councillor White. All in favor of proceeding in accordance with the motion? Approved. Very good. Thanks, Rochelle. The floor is yours.
Thank you for having me. My name is Rochelle Minette. My pronouns are they, them, and she, her, and I'm here to represent the Accessibility Advisory Committee of the HRM and present our 2025 annual report. I'm excited I get to do my own slides. So just a quick overview of my presentation. First is a summary of our committee membership, meetings, and events. Next, I'll go through the 2025 report on our work plan priorities. presentations and discussions that we've had over this past year. And last, I'll share a bit about our current work plan for 2026, which I believe you will be hopefully accepting, and some elements that we've already started to work on since we are well into 2026 at this point. So for those unfamiliar or those watching from home, the Accessibility Advisory Committee, or the AAC, advises and assists regional council through the Executive Standing Committee on the impact of municipal policies, programs, and services on persons with disabilities. Our committee is made up of HRM community members with lived experiences related to disability and accessibility, as well as 3 counselors, which one is here today. Hello. And our meetings generally take place on the 3rd Monday of every month from 4 to 6 p.m. On the screen here is a list of our current membership as of May 2026. As noted in my introduction, I'm the chairperson of this committee, and also always want to give a shout out to Vice Chair Nicholas Harris, because things don't happen without a team ultimately. Our meetings also include support from Melissa Myers and Morgan Evans from the Office of Diversity and Inclusion, and of course Elizabeth McDonald, our wonderful and incredible legislative assistant, who's also here, and this legislative assistant, so shout out to you, you're the best, literally. The AAC also generally holds an annual town hall where we invite community members to a public meeting to hear from HRM business units and share concerns or questions. This year, the town hall took place on Wednesday, November 5th, 2025 at Paul O'Regan Hall at the Halifax Central Library. The event included a panel and Q&A with Halifax business units, and new this year, we also decided to include a more informal booth fair so that community members could have more sort of individual conversations with business units, some who were already on the panel, and then some additional units who, can only have so much of a panel, otherwise it takes too long. This year, we also decided to invite a representative from the Nova Scotia Accessibility Directorate, since in past years we noticed some community members had questions that were really outside of the scope of the municipality. So we wanted to make sure that there was someone available to answer them instead of having to send them away sort of without their questions answered. Overall, we were really pleased with this year's town hall, and especially happy with the inclusion of some of these newer components. So the panel and Q&A portion gave us some really valuable insight into what the community has been dealing with. So I wanted to share just a quick summary of some of this with you. We heard from a few community members about issues with Accessibus, things like wait lists, rider experiences, and the prioritization of certain types of trips over others. So for example, medical appointments are often prioritized over recreation experiences because of a limit in services, even though both of those things are equally important in quality of life. We also heard about some accessibility issues with construction sites in the HRM, mainly that accessible parking spots are often removed during projects and not always temporarily replaced, and issues with wayfinding because of sign placements or vehicle placements, things like that. We heard varied feedback about 311. There was lots of positive discussion on improvements to the service, but also noted was a lack of texting options that hasn't been implemented yet, and limited hours of operation, which I'm sure is always an issue with lots of different community members. We also heard about some tension between active transportation projects and accessible design. So while community members really felt that active transportation is extremely important to our communities, some implementation of this has caused accessibility issues for them. So raised bike lanes, diagonal street crossings, things like that. The last thing we heard about was related to gaps in emergency services. And this kind of comes up later because it was also a presentation that we heard at the committee. And most notably, a community member described an experience of having an issue with Accessibus, so they called an accessible taxi, but they weren't able to book one, and because it was the evening, 311 wasn't reachable at that point, so they ended up having to call police, who then had them call an ambulance, and in the end, they had to pay a lot of money for an ambulance, and that ambulance wasn't able to transport their wheelchair. So I think it really, this story sort of highlights the difficulty community members are facing just trying to get around the city, and it sounds like different business units aren't necessarily working together to make some of these processes easy on community members. So following the town hall, the Accessibility Advisory Committee debriefed the event, and this eventually led us to our discussion about our 2026-2027 work plan priorities. So before getting into our current work plan that I'm hoping you accept, I'll do my report on the 2025 work plan and what we were able to accomplish this year. Also to start, I'd like to note that instead of creating a new work plan for 2025-2026, we opted to reuse our 2023 work plan since we didn't have a town hall in 2024 because of municipal elections. We felt we didn't have enough community input to really work on a new plan that reflected the needs of the community, so we felt it was best to reuse our previous work plan that already took community feedback into account. So our priorities for our past year were built form related to accessibility standards of current and future HRM infrastructure projects, accessibility of sidewalks, and accessibility of HRM-owned infrastructure. AAC engagement throughout the municipal budget planning process, and accessible parking in the HRM. Also, I always like to note that our annual town hall is sort of a standing item on our AAC work plans. I believe this changed in 2022. It used to be its own priority, but we felt we were going to automatically do it anyways, and we wanted to make sure we had room for other priorities. So just a general overview, between January to November of 2025, we received 3 presentations from members of the public, 5 joint presentations from staff and members of the public, 3 staff presentations, and 9 committee-led discussions on the 2025 town hall planning. So that took up quite a lot of our year, and I think that our town hall event really showed for it, which was good. Under our built form priority, we received presentations about Graham's Grove Active Transportation Functional Plan, Multi-Use Pathway Project on Dunbrack Street, the Active Transportation Projects for Parkland Drive and Regency Park Drive, concept plans for the Halifax Urban Greenway Extension and active transportation facilities to Point Pleasant Park, and a review of winter operations service standards. Under priority 2, we didn't actually receive any presentations in 2025 about the municipal budget, and we've tried to address this in our 2026-2027 work plan, and I believe we're already making headway on that, but I will speak more to that later. And under priority 3, we received a presentation of an overview of on-street accessible parking in the HRM, and we're able to ask questions and give feedback on this. We also had a handful of presentations outside of our outlined priorities. So we had Halifax Transit come and talk about some accessibility considerations, give a big overview on that. We had a presentation from community members on the possibility of an emergency wheelchair rescue service, which ended up being very relevant based on what we heard in the town hall later that year in that specific person's story. We had an overview of just food and an action plan for the Halifax region around food security and food insecurity. We also had a presentation from 2 community members about treat accessibility, which was the hope to recognize October 16th annually as Treat Accessibility Day as part of an initiative to make Halloween more accessible for children with disabilities, which it sounds like you all actually accepted that. So now October 16th is officially Treat Accessibility Day, which is very cool. And we had an update on housing and homelessness in the HRM. We've found that there is quite a high number of disability community members experiencing housing insecurity and homelessness, so this really is always relevant. Okay. So moving on to our current work plan, or hopefully, we are currently working on this. We base this work plan on what we heard from community members during the town hall, as well as issues that continue to come up throughout our 2025 committee meetings that we believe still need our attention. As a reminder, the town hall planning is included as a standing item on our 2026-2027 work plan, so that's just already there. So the first is Halifax Transit. We're looking for increased accessibility of Halifax Transit services, and this pertains both to Accessibus, but also general transit services and how they can be more accessible, since these things really go hand in hand and ultimately impact each other quite a lot. Our second priority, we decided to carry over built form from our past work plan. It really is always relevant, I think, especially as we're sort of aiming to be more accessible by 2030. We also heard quite a lot about construction and infrastructure throughout the town hall, and we thought we'd probably be able to add something around parking here if we needed to, so we didn't feel like we were losing that priority, because it is ultimately always going to be a priority. And our third priority here is committee engagement with the Halifax Regional Council and Budget Committee. And this is our response to the lack of committee involvement in the HRM budget planning process in past years. Something we've already implemented is a standing agenda item where we ask our councillor representative to keep us up to date on what is going on at Executive Standing Council. And we hope that this item will continue to be fleshed out and added to as you all get into your budget planning processes. Okay. That's all for my report. Try to speed through things a little bit. Thank you for having me. Another special thanks and shout out to Elizabeth, Melissa, and Morgan for their continued support and really moving our committee forward and making things happen and sending us lots of emails. And I'm happy to take questions if there are any. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Rochelle. You've been very generous in your acknowledging the others that help you make your work on the committee possible. Let us reflect that back now on you and say thanks to you for your wonderful chairing and to your fellow committee members for all the work. It's clearly you've been very busy, so thank you. I do see some questions on the board, and we'll go to the Deputy Mayor, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you so much for that presentation. It's always great when we have these opportunities as a little touch point to see what's happening on various committees that exist and hear all the great work that you're doing specifically around the Accessibility Committee. My question was about the town hall. I think it's fantastic that we're doing annual town halls now and really giving people an opportunity to come and provide feedback and input and participate. I'm just wondering if you could talk a little bit more about the town hall. Like, how many people are we averaging in attendance? I know there haven't been that many to have a real established average, but do we see it increasing in participation? Are people talking about any barriers to being able to participate in the town hall? Or how could we, because we're big regional municipalities, so I'm just wondering through the town hall format how we might be able to continue to see growth and engagement.
Oops. Thank you for that question. I think in my mind of sort of the town halls that I've been to, I do think that numbers are increasing. It looks like the town hall we had before this one, so I guess 2 years ago now, it seemed like there was a lot more people online, and now we're starting to get a little bit more engagement in person. I think it would be really helpful to get more people if more counselors were sharing in newsletters and other ways that you feel you could share, really reaching out to sort of all your constituents and making sure that people across different communities are aware of it. I think one of our biggest challenges is not being able to move the location every year. We've really found that Paul O'Regan Hall works for just a variety of reasons, and we, especially this past year when we were planning it and trying to find a new space, found that there wasn't a lot of other great accessible options that have transportation into account, bus routes available, that have the ability for the live streaming process that we're using. So that, I think, is a bit of a challenge for people who maybe don't want to come to downtown Halifax all that often for a variety of reasons, whether it's transportation, parking, etc. At one point, we were sort of discussing maybe involving some of the other libraries for almost like watch parties, but it seems like that's quite a big feat to take on. And as a committee, we don't really have that much say in that feat to take on ultimately. But if anyone here is like, I want to help with that, and especially in your specific area or your specific regions, maybe reaching out to the library and seeing if you could help host a watch party. That would be awesome. So yeah, I think that it's kind of I think right now we're, as a committee, doing all that we can. It would be great to see support from everybody else ultimately to get more people into seats and into other libraries maybe.
Yeah, I love that idea of watch parties at the different libraries. That's a great idea. Maybe that is something that we can discuss. And as for sharing the information through our newsletters, our print newsletters aren't very regular, so and the timing is always difficult because it takes like a long time to get those out the door. But certainly online, I know that corporate comms puts out information, and I think most of us do try to share that, but yeah, maybe putting a little bit more effort into getting the word out. That's certainly something I think many of us would be willing to do. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to Councillor Steele, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Rochelle, for your presentation. I attended your town hall last year, and I was very impressed. I liked hearing from the business units and also, hearing what they've done to improve accessibility, but also the questions from residents who wanted to, delve a little deeper in terms of what was presented. You mentioned you're planning to change the format this year, so the booths would complement what you did like last year, for example. Is that your intention? So you'd still have your presentation style, so you would have the booths that would occur perhaps before or after the presentations. How are we looking at setting that up? I'm just curious.
Right. Yeah, so we actually implemented the booths this past year in 2025. So we did have them after the presentations.
Oh, they were after.
Yeah, they were sort of hidden behind the curtain at Paul O'Regan Hall. And then once the panel ended, we moved the curtain, and then all the booths were sort of like available for people. Although we are looking at implementing the booths both at the beginning when people are sort of coming in, and then kind of pausing that, doing the panel, and then coming back to the booths after in case people need to.
So leave. Having more. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, okay, excellent. And then the other question I have is, you mentioned accessibility around transit. That's that I hear about that issue most, particularly around Accessibus, and also about our transit stops. The fact that sometimes residents are departing buses and jumping into mud puddles or slippery or conditions that haven't been looked after. When you were mentioning this as a key issue, do you have specific examples of things that are a priority to be addressed by the committee?
Oh, great question. I feel like there's so many priorities when it comes to transit. Yeah, I think personally, and I can't speak for the committee on this note necessarily, but personally, I think that increasing the accessibility of our sort of standard transit service would really help to actually decrease the wait list of Accessibus. There's a lot of community members right now that I do hear from who are, sort of forced to use Accessibus because they can't use standard transit services, even though with like some very small changes, they would be able to use standard transit services. And so it is making the wait list for Accessibus quite a bit longer for people who, all the people who still need it. So for me, that's sort of a personal goal, although I do think, still speaking with Accessibus and still prioritizing that is always going to be important as well. But yeah, we do hear a lot about, especially in the wintertime, something that we have spoken about in past committee meetings and had presentations from is sort of the overlap between snow clearing processes and transit services and how well those things are working together. Which is still a little bit of a question mark, I think, on our end. So hoping to have more presentations and provide more feedback to different transit services and especially snow clearing, because that does make a big difference. And as you were saying around like the slippery conditions, same with mud puddles. So, we can't control the weather, but we can sort of control how we impact the environment when it comes to our actual services that we're providing as a municipality. So yeah, I hope that answered your question.
Okay. Yes, it does. And I'll just conclude by saying I'd be happy to promote your upcoming town hall when the information comes out. And we all have usually monthly e-newsletters and mechanisms for communication. So if you get it into our system, and we can do that. Thank you.
Thanks, Rochelle. I don't see any other names on the board. Maybe I could ask you a quick question. You just mentioned that with some changes to regular transit, that could help to draw some of the wait list away from Accessibus. What, in your opinion, would those changes be?
I'm just one person with with specific accessibility needs as a community member with disabilities. I have had to stop using transit because of how long the wait times are, how irregular the schedule can be, how yes, the apps tell us what time the bus is supposed to come, and sometimes it even tells us that the bus is there, but it's not. So that can be very confusing. And that is something like when you're, scheduling Accessibus, you sort of avoid some of those scheduling issues and errors. But the waiting piece, bus stops are not always as accessible as they could be. We recently had a presentation about bus stop accessibility, and it was interesting to hear that seating at bus stops is not actually considered a mandatory component of accessible bus stops, which for many, many disabled people and also people with a variety of different accessibility needs, even if they don't identify as having a disability, seating is pretty crucial. So that's like a very one specific example and one very sort of small but large example of what I think is sort of an oversight in terms of how we're naming things to be accessible and how they're not really fully accessible. And I will I will say it's impossible for one thing to be accessible to every person. Ultimately, accessibility really is about person first sort of experiences and meeting people where they're at and addressing people's specific needs. But there are some sort of like general overview accessibility items that I think could more easily be addressed that aren't right now. So yeah, some wait time things, some scheduling things. People need to make sure they can get to their medical appointments, to their recreation activities, to their jobs. And right now they might not be able to do that with the way that standard transit services are operating. Also, the routes are quite long sometimes, and when you're just kind of being jostled around on the bus in rush hour for a very long time, once you get to your destination, it's very hard to move around, which is why I stopped using transit myself.
Okay, thank you, Rochelle, for those insights. I appreciate that very much. See the Deputy Mayor on the board, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think that was an excellent question, and I have examples from my district that kind of point directly to this issue. A lot of bus stops don't have landing pads. They're just letting people off at the side of the road, and the bus will not let somebody off at a bus stop, somebody with an accessibility issue, if you're, say, in a wheelchair, at a stop that doesn't have a proper landing pad and road infrastructure to support it. So I have a resident in Herring Cove. She uses transit. She can't get dropped off at Pavia because even though Pavia, they've made their building accessible up to building code and their bathrooms accessible, but you can't actually get off the bus at Pavia because there is no bus stop infrastructure. So, that to your point about, it's hard to accommodate everybody, but there is kind of a baseline standard that would certainly improve things for a lot of people. And that's just one of them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Rochelle, thanks again for all your work and for your excellent presentation today. I think this is bringing to a close this item on the agenda. So again, our collective thanks to you. Okay. Now, just before we move on to item 13.2.2, the solicitor would like to go back and revisit a question raised during the public participation section.
Thank you, Mayor. I have now had a chance to take a look at the charter, and I realize this is on the agenda for tomorrow, so I thought I would allay any fears. The municipality actually has the power to install or improve recreational facilities, including playgrounds and sports grounds. So that's not an issue in terms of the proposed and the information report that's being brought back tomorrow.
Okay, thanks for that clarification. We'll move on to 13.2.2, Accessibility Advisory Committee 2026-2027 Work Plan. And colleagues, again, there is a motion to put on the floor. Perhaps the representative would like to do that. Councillor White.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that the Executive Standing Committee review and approve the Accessibility Advisory Committee 2026-27 Work Plan.
Seconded by Councillor Steele. And any discussion?
I'm okay. I think we had a good presentation there. Ready?
Okay, I think we're ready for the question. Yep. And this is a hand vote as well. So all in favor, hands up. And that motion carries. Okay, thank you very much. This now means we are going to jump back in the agenda to item 13.1.1, amendments to A01 regarding African Nova Scotia affirmation. And I'll look to see if anybody would like to put that motion on the table. Councillor Steele, please.
I move that the Executive Standing Committee recommend that Halifax Regional Council adopt the amendments to Administrative Order 1, the Procedures of Council Administrative Order, as set out in Attachment 2 of the staff report dated June 17, 2026.
Seconded by Councillor Daigle-Gammon. Would you like to carry on?
Sure. Yes, I brought forward a motion for a staff report some time ago. I noted that while we sometimes included an African Nova Scotia affirmation during Black History Month, we were not doing it consistently, of course, across council or in our standing committees. Given the long history of African Nova Scotians in our province and their significant contribution to our history and to our culture and to our society, I felt it was important that we here in Nova Scotia and in HRM recognize that contribution and do it on a regular basis. So I'm pleased with the recommendations coming forward in the staff report. And I encourage the rest of council to adopt this.
Thank you, Councillor Steele. I don't see any other names on the list. Would you like to have the question? Question is called. Oh, it's a hand vote, beg your pardon. All in favor, show of hands, and the motion carries. Thank you very much for that. That brings us to item 13.1.2, the 2028 election method resource study. And once again, there is a motion to be put on the floor. And was that Councillor Steele? Okay, Councillor Steele.
Sure. I move that the Executive Standing Committee recommend that Halifax Regional Council, 1, direct that voting by a telephone and by a personal computing device are the only methods of voting to be used in the 2028 Halifax Regional Municipal and CSAP election, including any required special election between 2028 and 2032, as outlined in the discussion section of the staff report dated June 17, 2026, and in attachment 1. 2, direct the Chief Administrative Officer to direct staff to review bylaw A400, the alternative voting bylaw, and the Municipal Elections Act to identify any amendments that may be necessary to enable voting by telephone and by a personal computing device only based on the proposed approach contained in attachment 1 of the staff report dated June 17, 2026, and return to council with a report if any amendments are identified. And 3, request that the mayor write a letter to the province of Nova Scotia to request legislative changes allowing the returning officer to establish mobile polling locations for qualifying facilities licensed under the Homes for Special Care Act during the advanced voting period, as outlined in the discussion section of the staff report dated June 17, 2026.
And seconded by Councillor Daigle Gammon. Thank you very much for that. Councillor, did you have anything more to say? The floor is still yours if you'd like it.
Oh, sure. I read the report. I think it makes sense. It's consistent with our discussion during budget of reducing the costs. I am curious about how the one location per district might work out, because I think our residents are used to having various locations to vote, whether it was by paper ballot or by kiosks. So I'll be curious what the staff have to say about that. I do think it's a big win to avoid the suspension of e-voting 3 days before the actual election day. I know it's documented in the report. I think there were about 3,000 people tried to vote after e-voting had been suspended. And I know I personally heard about lots of people were disappointed about that. I think as well the approach that's being recommended around the Homes for Special Care, requesting a change so that we don't need to so that we are able to hold advanced polls there and don't require so many resources on election day also seems to be a very appropriate approach. So fully supportive of the approach, and I really like the idea of saving money, and I'm also hopeful that this will increase our voter turnout, because really that's what this is about. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. And I do note other names on the board, but we do have a staff presentation, so I'm going to suggest that we hear the presentation and then we'll carry on with the list. So the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor Fillmore, and through the committee. Thank you for having us here today. This is a report that we've been promising for a little while, and we're excited to bring it forward to you. This is, the way I'd kind of look at this, is a bit of a program evaluation. We have gone through and looked at the direction from council, how we've been operating elections since 2008, and are bringing a proposal forward to you that is trying to look at how we can best serve the public and look at resources. I want to be clear, this is not just a money-saving initiative. That's an important part of this for sure, but this is something that we're trying to do based on what we're seeing from the results from the election. But we're also anticipating that not everybody will love this approach. We are expecting, we heard from the last election, some conversations on the internet voting aspect of our elections, and we are trying to make sure that we're putting forward a communications approach and a service level approach that will meet the needs of the residents, but also protect the election process itself. So we have a longer presentation that Liam will go through and then time for questions. But again, we're here 2 years and a few months before the election date. We need time to be able to go through and plan this and be able to maximize our communication approach to it. We've also identified some risks. So there are risks that are associated with this that we're trying to meet head on. We're not trying to duck away from the risks that may be presented in doing an election of this magnitude through alternative voting. But we do believe the HRM, through its almost 20-year history, it'll be our 20-year anniversary in 2028 of alternative voting within the HRM, that we were providing an approach that we think will serve the needs of the public, of regional council, but also be something that we can communicate forward early and often to all residents, including the voting station question we've already received. So I'll pass it off to Liam, and then we'll have time for questions at the end.
Thank you, Ian, and good morning, members of Executive Standing Committee, Mr. Mayor. My name is Liam McSween. I'm the Elections and Special Projects Manager, and joining us too as well is April Doucette, who is our Election Project Coordinator, and Julie Everett, the IT Project Manager from the IT Project Management Office. Should there be any questions later on. Just to start, I'll give you a little bit of background. 2008 was when we brought in, as Ian had mentioned, alternative voting. It was adopted by the Halifax Regional Municipality and through a legislative change by the province to allow us to do that. And then from 2008 to 2024, we've been using what's known as a hybrid voting model here in the which incorporates both electronic and paper voting. So this was the chosen method based by council for voting for each regular election in that time period. Until 2019, we did a pilot project for electronic voting used as the only method of voting for a special election for District 15. In 2024, we brought a motion to the reason that we're here today, really, for council to explore what a fully electronic method voting would look like for 2028. We didn't have the resourcing to be able to pull off the study at that time, so we wanted to make sure that we were able to do a good job. One of the things that we did during that time was request that we go fully electronic for our advanced voting period in 2024, and you'll get a little information more about that as we go on. Budget Committee direction, March 3rd, 2026, where there was a decision by the Budget Committee to reduce the contribution to the election reserve by $200,000 annually, or $50,000 quarterly, through the elimination of paper-based voting for the 2028 election. And the budget, as you know, was approved on March 31st, 2026. So electronic voting in Nova Scotia, not a new thing. It's again, since the amendments to the Municipal Elections Act were made in 2008, it's been widely used, with about 96% of the municipalities incorporating it as a method of voting. As of 2024, 73% of the municipalities, or 31, in Nova Scotia used electronic voting as their only method of voting for their regular municipal and CSAP elections. So a hybrid voting model, you know, at a 1,000-foot glance, it requires, the administration of it requires recruitment and training of a large temporary workforce. In the case of the HRM, that's right around 1,300 people, temporary election workers. The establishment and operation of physical polling locations. So for the paper-based operations, their requirement for polling locations is a lot more than what would be required for a fully electronic election. Last one was about 74 regular polling location in addition to the 50 mobile polling locations that we use as well. It requires manual ballot and handling and counting of ballots. So in Nova Scotia, we do hand counts. We're not permitted to use electronic voting tabulators for our paper-based operations. So this is a time-consuming and extensive process. The suspension of electronic voting, as Councillor Steele had referenced earlier there, on election day to accommodate paper-based voting. So we do have to shut down the electronic voting 3 days in advance to prepare those paper lists for those polling locations. That we really see a loss in voting momentum in those cases. And then, of course, the extended election night and post-election reporting and audit processes. So results reporting. For those of you that were participants in the last election would notice that there were some delays there in terms of the logistics and the processes around that, coupled with the electronic voting. So an electronic voting model, a single stream electronic voting model, reduces election staffing requirements by approximately 70%. Based on the model that we're proposing, simplifies election night reporting and post-election activities. So we'll have a better idea once polls close on what the results of the election look like after, of course, the audit and verification process. Improves service consistency for electors. Reduces environmental impacts associated with paper ballots. Within our all electronic election, we'll be killing a lot less trees. So that's one thing that we're very, very happy about. Enables more responsive and scalable election delivery and reduces operational costs by approximately $800,000. So just a few statistics on the 2024 election. 69.2% of electors, roughly 84,454 people, cast their vote by internet or telephone in advance. 30.8% of the electors, or 39,075, cast their vote by paper ballot. One of the things that we don't really know about that number is whether or not that was by preference or because that was the only option that was available on election day. So we don't know if that's, that's the way that it went. Paper voting was the only method of voting on election day, so that would, for the reasons that we just explained. We had, during that, in 2004, where we went fully electronic for our advanced voting, we had a total of 2,316 votes cast by in-person via kiosk during both advanced poll days. So that's both days, we had a total of 2,316 electors using those kiosks. So that influences the number that you're seeing today, that 25 number for those regular polling locations. This accounted for about 2.7% of the overall vote. So the vast majority of people were voting online or over the telephone at home in advance of the election. Voter turnout in 2024 was 36.8%, or 123,529 out of 335,341 eligible electors. Voter turnout for the last 3 regular elections averages 36.75%. So just this graph, you'll notice it's a bit of a reverse curve. So this is the advanced voting period. So when we commenced advanced voting on the 8th of October, and when we had to shut it down on the 16th there. This is very typical for what you would normally see during advanced voting when you're using internet and telephone voting. It starts off pretty heavy, and then you see a little lull, and then as you get closer towards election day, you see those numbers starting to creep up. And that dive that you see here is when we had to shut it down to advance to paper elections. So. As it was stated by the councillor, we had multiple individuals trying to access the system after it was closed down. So we had about 617 people trying to access telephone voting, 3,220 trying to access internet voting. So, 338, 37 roughly. We don't know if those people went out and voted in person or not. So could be potential lost votes, maybe not. The vote model and resourcing for 2028. So as Councillor Steele had mentioned, 25 in-person poll locations. This is what we're proposing, and it is based on that model that we used for our advanced polls the last time. There's, depending on the district, where those locations are located, so our larger districts, we tend to have multiple polling locations in those areas. And then in our more dense areas that we have just the one. So there'd be 2 voting kiosks, and these are staffed with sworn election officials. The other method that we're proposing is that we would have 10 reserve voting kiosks with additional staff to be deployed in high demand areas if required. So one of the benefits of the electronic voting model is we're able to be able to deploy people very quickly to one of these locations if we notice that there's lineups or there's delays or those types of things, and then those people can be sent to other areas. The thing to remember about electronic voting is there's no geographic restrictions involved with it. So paper-based voting, you are tied to your particular polling station and your polling location. So electors are tied to those areas. And I'm going to use those terms sort of interchangeably. When I'm referring to stations, I'm referring to tables within a polling election or within a polling location. And the location is where those tables are housed. So there'll be multiple tables, stations within a polling location. And I promise I won't do that very much more, but that's what I'm talking about. So in a paper-based election for a municipality of our size, with our people, we have about 368 tables, stations, which each require 2 staff, and about 74 regular polling locations in addition to the mobile homes. So as it stands right now, HRM is home to 50 mobile homes. So these are homes that are registered under the Homes for Special Care Act with 10 beds or more. So they would be serviced with in-person kiosk voting. And the way that would work is we have teams of 2 that would do 2 of those homes within the day on election day. So 25 kiosks and teams of 25 that would visit those locations. And those hours are predetermined and set with the facility. So they have to operate between 8 and 7 on election day, but they are preset hours based on a direct relationship with the facility. And that's for their operational purposes as well. So electronic voting would remain open under this model until polls close on election day. So that's at 7 o'clock. So this eliminates the 3-day pause for electronic voting. Electors requiring assistance can vote at any one of those polling locations across the municipality. So again, not tied to your residence or any of those places. If you live in Musquodoboit, but you're going into Dartmouth to do shopping, you can go to the Dartmouth polling location if you want. You can go to the downtown Halifax one. It doesn't matter. The kiosk hours can be extended for voters who are still in line at the end of polls. So if we're in a situation where we do have lineups and we have people there, we can extend those hours a little bit longer when we generally shut down electronic voting. So that mirrors the exact same process that you would have for in-person paper balloting. So this is just an overview. So like I said, under the proposed model, we're looking at, it'd be 75 polling locations in total. That includes those mobiles. So 25 polling locations for the districts, and then the 50 for those mobiles. If you look at the hybrid voting, 143, and if you move to an all paper method, it would be even more, it'd be around 155 locations. So just a general overview there as well. Election worker shifts 414 as opposed to 1,413 for hybrid voting, or 2,217 for an all-paper election. And then, of course, our paper ballot quantities are there as well, too, which we would have to look at as well. So operational efficiencies, continuous access to voting until close of polls without multi-day pause. Staffing efficiencies, including the ability to reallocate 2 contractual FTEs to enhance candidate and mobile poll coordination. So the overall election office, we're able to do more with the same amount of resourcing. In our last election, we identified the need for 2 specific contractual positions. One related to mobile poll coordination for those 50 mobile polls, and also one for candidate-specific activities, nominations, handling those things and disclosures and all those types of activities that have to happen. So we're able to convert some of our positions for our election area officer positions to be able to provide those services that we required. The other thing under this model, we would be transitioning all of the call center functions for 311 to reduce staffing needs. So this is how we do our revisions for the election, people calling to see if they're on the list, to get added to the list, and then general election inquiries would be moving to 311, as opposed to the current model where the election office stands up a separate call center for those activities. And that's really just a method of using the subject matter experts that we have to do that sort of workforce management. And then it would still be tied to the election office because there's a legislative position there with revisions, so we would have a liaison role as well too. So we're looking at that as well. The total election office staffing would be reduced from 30 contractual FTEs to 18 contractual FTEs, with the core of that call center staff moving to 311. Logistics, smaller overall footprint for delivery, poll location, supplies, and storage. All of you are very aware how large the municipality is. So getting to all those polling locations on election night is a challenge, to say the least. There's a lot of staff working till the very wee hours of the next morning there. So this is a way for us to reduce some of the logistics, and kind of ties into some of our overall environmental goals as well. Quicker auditable results reporting and post-election wrap-up activities too. That's the other kind of bonus with the all-electronic election, is where results will come in quicker and accurately. So just a little graphic for you, the administrative load reduction. So this is where you see a lot of your cost savings as well. Fewer physical materials, reduced transport, fewer locations, no ballot tabulation services. So we're not getting into overtime hours for people counting manual ballots, that kind of stuff, and lower risk of human error as well. So as noted, the Homes for Special Care Act, we are required to provide polling locations on election day. That's really where the rub is here. The act is very specific that that service has to be provided on election day as opposed to the advanced polling period. So we were hoping to be able to do our mobile polls, be able to provide service during those advanced polling locations. Our legal services folks have had a review of that, and the act is very explicit that we have to provide it on election day. We would like to look at a legislative amendment to be able to change that, because it would allow us to provide better service over that extended time. It would also let us utilize our staffing and equipment in a more efficient manner as well. So with a cost savings of around $146,000. 311 integration, I've already touched on that. That is underway regardless of which way we're running the election. It's leveraging that expertise that we have in-house is really the biggest proponent for that. Of course, we will have a election person assigned to that as well, because there is a statutory role there in terms of the revisions process and being able to provide credentials to electors, and we'll make sure that we have that covered off. Staffing and resources, of course, we've touched on this. Mobile poll coordinator and candidate coordinator being able to be reallocated within existing resources. Budget impact, just overall, these are estimated costs at this point, but electronic voting, we're looking at a total spend of around $3.1 million. Hybrid voting, it gets a little bit more expensive when we put in the paper and those additional locations, and of course the additional staff. You're looking around 3.9, and then paper voting, where we have a full paper voting is quite expensive at around 4.4 million, and that really has to do more with the counting and reconciliation after the end of the election. We have not run a full paper election in the municipality since 2008, so it's and we've grown significantly since then. So looking at some of the models across the country, or Alberta has moved to a hand counting model. It was quite a challenge for them to be able to, for other municipalities to be able to do the hand counts. Just before I get to the end here, I do want to acknowledge the working group that we had put together for this. They were the same cast of characters that helped us out during the election, and really this is folks that from all over the municipality, all over business units to help us pull together the resourcing study. They've been very, very helpful and put in a lot of work to help us bring this report to you today. And of course, we're available for any questions that you may have.
Thank you so much, Ian and Liam. You make it look easy. Those elections are so smooth, and it's amazing to see how much is going on under the hood here. So thanks for all of that. Quite a number of names on the board, so let's get cracking with the Deputy Mayor, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, so great report, a lot of data and analysis in there about where we're going. You know, as someone with one of the larger districts, and, you know, there are some of us whose districts are larger than others significantly, I'm having trouble with the one polling station per district, and wondering if you looked at doing that on a square kilometer basis, like so many polling stations per square kilometer. Not because it's not just a matter of density, it's a matter of how far people need to travel. And when you also run into issues where not everybody has internet access, I do worry about people feeling that it's more that for some people it's more of a burden to vote than less through this model. Like particularly where you're also dealing with seniors, where it could be a real challenge. So I'm wondering if you could speak to that as well. I think what we're seeing is as we move to more electronic systems, we're also all of a sudden being faced with higher risk when it comes to security breaches. This is evolving constantly. Like it's even evolved over the last 6 months, the last 3 months. It's as AI is kind of gaining power and strength. I know you talk about that and you talk about the risk, but where hackers can now ask AI to go into a system, find the vulnerabilities, and shut it down. Like we see real life examples of this happening daily. Particularly our public services and utilities are kind of targets for this kind of malicious attacks. When it comes to voting, like how are we going to assure people that their voting information will remain private and confidential, that on election day or during this time people will be able to vote electronically and we're not going to be shut down by outside forces? Or even when we rely on third-party vendors, like we know that even third-party vendors, as good as they might say their security is, that's not always the case because everybody is kind of responding to a new vulnerability right now. So I guess those would be my main concerns in this moment. And these I might not have had these AI concerns 2 years ago, but I certainly do today. And wondering if you can speak a little bit about that, please.
Thanks very much. And I'm going to start with your first point, too, on the 25 locations. So it's not necessarily one per district. So certainly in some of our larger, more rural areas, we've got 3 in District 1. We've got 3 in District 2. The newer District 13 that we've created in District 11 both have 2 in them as well, too. And it's we did work with our GIS folks to sit down and look at what maybe drive times look like. And those spatial. So, not requiring more than a 30-minute drive from a population center to be able to get to a polling location. One of the things that we routinely do as well, and that we are legislatively required to do under the Act, is look at polling location accessibility as well too, right? So making sure that they're on transit routes where available, parking lots are good, they're open and accessible for anybody who may be requiring assistance in terms of using a wheelchair or a walker or those types of things. So we have a very stringent guidelines that we work on in concert with the facility design and construction and our folks in diversity and inclusion. We've put together a pretty strong checklist. The other opportunity that we have too in terms of being able to provide reliable internet access for folks is working with our partners in Halifax Public Libraries and our community centers as well too. So if it's a matter of just requiring a stable and reliable secure internet access, that we have many community partners that we can work with where people who are comfortable to be able to do it. These 25 locations effectively are for folks that require assistance in voting. So I might not necessarily be comfortable because I've not used electronic voting before, and I need somebody to be able to help me with that. So we would have sworn election officials in those locations to be able to do that, and to be able to assist. Or it could be the case that it might be somebody's first time voting in an election. So it could be I'm a brand new Canadian citizen. I want to go to a polling location to be able to cast my ballot. That's what these are going to be set up for. So again, working through our community partners. And being able to be able to tell people where they can go to get reliable internet access or to go get voter assistance is what we're looking at for, and that's where those 10 reserve kiosks come in handy as well too. We can effectively be able to deploy people to places where it might get a little bit busy on election day. Looking at the numbers from the last time around too, we see our from the alternative voting period. The advanced voting period from 2024, the numbers were not high on those 24. So for those 25 locations, we had 2,300 electors go through it for the entire those 2 advanced polls that we had open on those dates. So that's sort of that's why you see that recommendation coming here, because it's kind of an art and a science, I guess, in a way, in saying, you know, where are we going to place these locations. And then on the cybersecurity side and the security side of things, you're absolutely right. Like those are issues, and we've watched what's happened in other parts of the country as well too. I will say we have probably the highest cybersecurity designation that we can in terms of procedures and protocols required of our vendors. So that's a SOC 2 certification or ISO 004. There's various ways to do that. So all of our data is housed in Canada. That's a requirement. We do a privacy impact assessment through our Office of Access and Privacy, and we also require external auditors as well too. So in the past election, it was Ernst & Young. They bring on a special team of auditors in advance of the election to do penetration tests and tests on the system. So they're accessing the system from various computers to make sure that that they're not able to get access to things that they're not able to get access to.
And the cost for those additional resources in the report, they accounted for in that report?
Those are costs that we would cover anyway with our hybrid elections models as well too. So that's where that recommendation is coming from. And I don't know, Ian, if you have anything you want to add to that.
Just to the Deputy Mayor, that with almost 80% of the ballots in the last election being cast electronically, this is all items that we are trying to consider and put at the forefront, no matter what the direction is from council and committee on this recommendation to bring forward to you. Very astute point that this is a shifting market. It's a shifting level of technology that we need to be monitoring. And if we were to find that there was a risk, or if there's a risk that we could not bring forward, we're 2 years out from the election trying to make a plan for this so that we could bring something forward if we did see those risks create an untenable situation. With the strong, I guess, additional risk to this is moving away from an alternative voting mechanism is a significant cost and resourcing ask on the election office and on the HRM, and the most expensive type of election to run is an all paper-based election. So your points are very well made, and we're trying to monitor it the best we can on it with, again, the evolving situation that we're dealing with technology on everything, and really relying on our penetration testing and the third-party auditing that happens on the election process before, during, and after the election to ensure that we have not just said we've done the things that we've done, that we're held and tasked with making sure that we can provide that information in a formal way, that we have third-party auditors checking the testing of the vote, but also testing the security of it when we bring forward any of our election results. I would offer this is probably going to be something that will continue to be an evolving conversation for the rest of my career when it comes to election management.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, and we'll move on to Councillor White, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Ian and Liam. Yeah, I have the same concern about just the number of polling stations, mine being probably the smallest district, but I had at least 2 for District 7, or we did. So just, yeah, that's a change, if you could speak to that a little more. And then the second thing is fraud and more, I almost don't want to say, but like there was points where I could have taken somebody's ballot. It was just there. What do you do to protect against that? Like, can you only vote once per IP? And like, more about that. Thank you.
Through to the mayor, to the councillor, I'll take the first part of it, and then Liam will take on the security part. So there is a known risk of reducing the in-person polling locations we're bringing forward to you today. The alternative will mean that you can vote wherever you want to on that day, not just at the polling location. So we are hoping that will address some of the numbers that could be seen. So you can still vote from your home on election day, don't have to go to a polling station. So we're hoping that that will address some of those concerns. We also, if we are noting and if we see something through the election planning processes that identify we have a major need to add a polling location, we'll do our best to accommodate that. So we're asking for a decision today, but I would offer this as a bit of a living plan as we're getting into our planning phases over the next 2 years. There also is additional risk and expenses with adding polling stations. So if we were to mirror the same polling locations that we had in the last election, we would have additional costs, which is something that we could provide forward to you and council can make that decision. But there's also inherent risk because we're going to be hiring a different type of election worker for these type of voting locations. We're going to need people with pretty strong technological abilities, and we have to be able to resource those with the kiosks and with the actual technology to be able to run them. So we're trying to thread the needle here between adding as many polling locations as will service the community, but not also adding additional risk when it comes to being able to service those properly from the technology and from the people standpoint of it. One of the things that we're going to try, and I think Liam touched on it, being able to leverage our libraries, our community centers who have incredibly strong technological abilities and computer access is a way that we're actually hoping to increase the places where people can go and vote if they need support on that. And again, we're trying our best to be able to provide that service, but also not to provide a service that's going to overcapacitate our system and the people that we need to run those voting stations.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on. Is there more to say?
And
Okay,
just in terms of the security, the credentials that are provided for electronic voting they're tied to the elector. So we can tell when somebody's voted. The other thing that we get from our vendor as well, from our e-voting vendor, is the IP address as well too. So if they're always looking for funky things with IP address. You got to be careful with that though, because that IP address could be tied to a library computer someplace. So there could be multiple people, or we can separate which ones are kiosk voting as well too. So but again, so when somebody casts their vote and they've done it online, we can see and they're automatically struck off the list. Yeah, and
But that's what I'm getting at is voting for 10 different people.
Voting for 10 different people. Yeah, that again too. That's something that we would monitor as well too. So if we see again an IP address and there's 10 different things coming, that would be flagged for us as well too for further investigation.
Okay.
And it's and the credentials are also tied to the person's date of birth as well too. So we were able to see which credentials for each elector in a given household are provided as well too. So
Thank you.
no problem.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to Councillor Daigle-Gammon, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Ian and Liam. I'm really glad you started by saying that this is really not about saving money, but it really is about, making our system better, getting more people out to vote, all of that kind of stuff. I was also really happy to hear that there'll be 3 in District 1, because when we think about the more rural parts of HRM, not just District 1, we don't all have libraries either. So the default cannot be a library. One of the things I do know, though, is that in Upper Musquodoboit, for example, the library did boost their internet. So you can be in the parking lot and get on the internet, but that's only in Upper. But I guess trying to figure out how we could do that in more rural locations, the better. That would be great. So I was worried about the 25 in-person poll locations, not so much anymore. The communication strategy that you spoke about in 2027 and then in 2028 looks really good. I would also think that maybe councillors in their e-newsletters, there could be a standard, something that would be in our newsletters that could go out a couple of times, a couple of issues, the year before the election. The stats about the attempts, but we don't know whether or not the persons may still have gone and done a paper vote, but 3,837 did the research that you did, was it able to break it down per district, and would it have made any material difference in an election result? I think some people might ask that question. They could maybe use that stat a little bit interestingly. And then the other part is the 2 FTEs make perfect sense, but is that captured within the budget? Because when you look at the three tables, it says that there's no tax impact in fully electronic. So just to make sure that those are within the budget and it's not going to be looked at as a new ask of staff. Thank you.
Through the mayor, the councillor, the slide that we gave you that showed those potential, so what those mean is people who attempted to log in but were not allowed to because internet voting
Yes.
or alternative voting was shut down. We don't have a way of quantifying the amount of people who went, oh shoot, I missed it, I didn't even try, and they didn't come on the Saturday to be able to vote. So I would offer those stats are clear for what we could provide. They were fairly consistent across the entirety of the HRM. That is a snapshot of the people who attempted, not the people who realized they were post-alternative closing and just didn't even bother to.
Right.
So I think that they're important stats, but I wouldn't say they're the full cataclysm of what actually could have happened with it. The biggest part and the biggest factor we see with this is the loss of momentum on voting during that shutdown phase.
Got it.
I would also offer, when we provide you the 2028 election recap, I think that reverse bell curve will probably look pretty similar. We see a lot of people at the beginning, we see a lull in the middle, and then we see a big peak towards the end. And I'm also pretty certain we're going to see people who try to log in after 7 p.m. on election day and aren't able to as well. This isn't a silver bullet. If you want to get into a really good pontification with me, we can talk about does alternative voting increase voter turnout or not. There's many different perspectives on it, but we're looking at almost 80% of the HRM voted electronically in the last election. There's a major loss of momentum for those 3 days and a different way of voting on election day that we're trying to find a consistent approach to how we vote. We're one of the only municipalities that I'm aware of that effectively runs 2 elections, smashes them together at the end, and gives you an output. We can do it, we've shown we can do it, but it creates additional expense and additional cumbersome when it comes to getting the vote out. It's also why we were delayed in getting, so the delay in getting some of the election results out in 2024 had nothing to do with the alternative voting. It was everything to do with the counting and confirming of the paper ballots in order for us to get the final election results. This is an attempt to address those issues. And again, to be overly frank, 80% of the ballots were done through alternative voting, which largely meant that everybody sitting in this room was elected through the alternative voting provision. We're trying to find a way to be consistent in how we offer that. I expect there will be people who will be unhappy without having paper, but we have shown and demonstrated since 2008 that this is a way that has been audited through recounts and through court challenges of showing an effective way of running an election. And we're trying to selfishly, in some ways, run one election, not 2.
Thank you.
And just to answer your question on the budget piece, yes, those the conversion of those 2 positions are absolutely included in the budget. So that's we're able to reduce some of the numbers for the paper-based stuff that we had where we hadn't and were required additional resources and retool them for the resources that we need.
Thank you, and we'll move to Councillor Kent, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, committee members, for allowing me the opportunity to ask just a couple of questions. Many of them are already asked, and I feel much better. A couple that are still on my mind are, where are we in comparison to other jurisdictions in the evolution of change around a voting system like this versus the paper? And on that, has there been any research on the systems and the agencies out there that can provide the system to us around the volume of voting pressures, the mass numbers of people who might do it at the same time, given before work hours, things like that, on a system, and the crashes that can happen? So I'm wondering where that research is in relation to going in this direction. We probably I don't know if we experienced anything like that in the last one on the advanced voting, but I think that's an area where we have to be very cautious, particularly around this new look. The other thing is, help me understand what the experience would be for folks who choose the phone or internet, because I remember last time there was some confusion and concern around residents not having received their voter ID that allowed them to vote. There was a need, I believe it was that Canada Post had to send them something. Canada Post, it didn't arrive. Then people were asked to go through a process, and then it would be sent out again, and whether or not it actually gets to them. Those sorts of things concern me around this kind of thing, and I'm just wondering, how does that get resolved? How do people actually receive? Is there a new version of how they'll receive their ID? And of course the education piece, and Councillor Degelgammon mentioned it as well, that I think it'd be really helpful for us people are looking to us to get the information out to them. The last thing, the question around, and I hope it doesn't happen, but this whole notion that mass voting could happen if someone, even if it was just someone in the family saying, well, let's just gather all the votes and we'll put them in because we know that we're all voting the same way, or maliciously, whatever it is. If that happens early in the voting, what would be the process to deal with that? And the other is, what happens if that happens on E-Day? What would be the process to deal with that? Is that a cancellation of votes? Like, how does that then pan out if that were to happen?
So thanks very much for your questions. On the first one with the sort of I guess the scalability or the demand, those from what I understand, I do have Julie Everett here with IT. Those are all models that have kind of been worked out by our vendors as well too. Okay. So we have, in our particular case, we're working with Simply Voting, who is and IntelliVote, who's a local company. They've been in the internet voting business for 20 years plus, the two of them. So they're able to do this on a mass scale. In terms of other municipalities, there are, in Canada, it's really Ontario, right? That's the other big, Nova Scotia is kind of the trailblazer in many ways. A lot of the rural municipalities in Ontario use internet voting as a way for accessibility measures as well too. The PIN generation, as Ian said before, it's tied to the elector's date of birth. We are able to, and we did experience some issues with Canada Post. Do you remember there was multiple strikes last election that really did provide some issues, and there was some changing of some postal codes where some folks didn't get their credentials on time. We have a system through our 311 operators where we can securely email voting credentials to people. They have to call on, they have to take their oath, they have to attest they are who they say they are. And there's multiple safeguards in place for that. But one of the benefits about the electronic voting model is there are de facto registration revision stations as well too, right? So somebody I didn't get my voter letter, I can go to any one of these 25 locations, I can do my oath, my attestation, and we can produce your credentials for you. Okay. Right there, we can print it, and that person can either vote there or they can go home and they can do it at home, either online or on the telephone as well too. So those are types of the things that we'd be looking at. In terms of the investigation, our vendors and our IT department are pretty diligent in looking for anomalies, as well as our external auditors as well too, right? So if they're noticing something that's coming up in the system that looks pretty wonky, they'll be able to tell us how we can go about it, right? So where it's worth investigating, because in some cases, if they're public domain computers, like we said, like in the case of a library, that would not flag our system. Anybody who's voting for anybody, regardless of if they're doing it in paper or they're doing it they're committing election fraud if there's no ID requirements for Nova Scotia municipalities, right? This is oath and attestation. So regardless if you were coming in and we're issuing you a paper ballot, if you were attesting that you are saying who you say you are, you're getting that ballot. So that's in a way, that's a way for where the technology can actually help us, because if we're looking at malicious actors or those types of things, we can work through our vendors on that and be able to investigate that as much as we can. In terms of the what happens after that, then that's a referral to the RCMP. That's a full-on criminal investigation after that point, I would say, and taking the various steps through the Department of Municipal Affairs to help with that. I hope that was. Did I get everything?
You answered it. I feel like I still have some questions, but that's okay. We have time.
Okay, thank you. I think we'll keep moving in the interest of time here, and we'll come to Councillor Young, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ian and Liam, you guys mentioned about home for special care. What about the ones who are in home care and they can't get out to vote and they're in their homes? Is there somebody to come to the home itself and to assist them in the voting process?
Through the mayor, the councillor, we do not have bedside service for the election outside of those formal home care places that we mentioned, the ones that are legislated. If somebody did need assistance with voting, they could reach out to our election office and we would do our best to accommodate that. It's also where we hope and we're anticipating that offering the extended alternative voting will allow that to be a little bit easier. Rather than a pen and paper election where you actually have to physically bring a paper ballot to somebody, this would be something that we would be able to accommodate through the technology that they're comfortable using. It's also one of the positives of alternative voting is that people are able to vote using the technology they are comfortable with rather than having to learn something new. It is a legislative and a capacity gap that we have, but we would do everything we could to try to accommodate that if people reached out to us. So people at those formalized legislative locations, we have multiple ways that we can bring the ballot to them, whether that's having a kiosk in the common area or bringing it to people who are not able to come to those common areas. Those ones are relatively covered. The at-home people who are incapacitated and are not able to leave, we don't have a mechanism to formally help with that, but if people reached out to us, we would do whatever we could to try to assist.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, and we'll come back to Councillor Steele, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I apologize. I think I spoke out of turn earlier. I do have a quick question. I don't think I saw the list of kiosks or list that you're proposing for the sites. I know you mentioned. Was it in the report? I don't think I saw it. So that was one. And the other one is during the election, I heard that some voters had issues with telephone voting. They voted for the mayor and then they were cut off before they got to the councillor voting. And I heard that from a number of residents. So wondered, do we have a fix for that? Perhaps, yeah. Okay. Quick questions. Thank you.
Thanks so much. We didn't actually provide the 2024 list with the specific locations. And the reason that we didn't do that is because those locations could change based on our evaluation of those sites, right? So the numbers we would keep relatively the same in terms of where is going in the district, but we're constantly doing audits and scans for proper locations, right? So it might not necessarily be the exact same, your polling location is going to be at the Zatzman Sportsplex. It might move to somewhere else based on our qualifications of what we need to be able to put the equipment in those rooms. So that's why at this point it's just the number. But we're going to have to come back to you with some reports as well. So in the when we get closer to the election, we'll have that sort of summarized. That'll say these are the proposed locations when we do that legwork. And the second part of your question, I'm sorry, I lost it.
It was more about
the telephone voting. Yes. Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. And that's the thing. And it was brought up here with the communications and engagement plan. You can understand why that is so necessary for what we're proposing here. So electors have to go through the whole thing. The systems are the same system that generates the internet vote generates the telephone vote as well too. So our plan is to make sure that we have very easily accessible videos, how-to videos on how you're able to cast those votes as well, right? So that would be a full-on example of a telephone vote that we could put up on our webpage, or that we can demonstrate through some of our engagement activities when we get closer to the election. So we'll make sure that we have that kind of public education stuff available to make sure that you're able to go through and what you need to do to confirm that vote, to complete that vote and confirm that vote.
Okay, so people were disconnected in during the process, so, and then they weren't able to complete their voting. So that was really more my question. Yeah.
Turn myself off there. Yeah, I think in terms of the other option too is, you know, cell connectivity and cellular activity and all that kind of stuff, right? So the system, we didn't in 2024 have any disruptions with the system itself, but we had, I think it was more on the user side of
yes,
things.
Yes, but is there an out if you're in the middle of it and your phone dies, for example? I'll just use, is there an out, and what is the out?
Through the mayor of the councillor. So first off, this is not the last election item you're going to see from us over the next 2 years. So sorry about your luck. Council will see these voting subdivisions before we get to the election. So you'll see the locations, you'll see where they're going to be. This is not this is not sending us off on our merry way without coming back in so you can see what's happening. So from the original conversation, if we do see a need or a perceived need for these voting locations, or to increase them or decrease them, council will have the ability to approve that. So this is not the last time you'll see that conversation. For the telephone vote, what we'll do and what we will continue to do for this is do user acceptance testing of all of our technology. That's including the alternative voting process. So people going through who are not Liam and myself going through and testing it to make sure that the actual general public user knows how to use it. And we'll do the same for the telephone voting. So I appreciate you flagging that issue, and we'll work with our vendor to make sure that we can address those situations. And at the same time, what Leah mentioned before, if there is issues with the voting process, people can reach out to our office and we can support them and we'll help walk them through that and make sure that we can confirm that their vote was cast. Again, we can't see what they cast the ballot for, but we can go through, and if they were cut off, we can work with them and make sure that they're given the opportunity to vote in all of the races on it. That issue you brought up with the telephone vote, we'll provide it with our vendor and we'll make sure that we have an action plan towards that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And rounding it off with the deputy mayor, please.
Thank you. It's more just a point of clarification, and I think it is important. You keep mentioning 80%, but the document says 70%, 69%. And so there's still 30% of the population, which is a significant number. Like 30% is noteworthy of people that came in using paper ballots. So I just want to clarify, is it's 80% or 70%?
It is, through the mayor of the council, it is 70%, and that is a misspoke on my part, and I apologize for that. Is 69, I can't remember what the final percentage of it, and I apologize for misspeaking during this presentation.
Right. So even when we look at the missed votes, I think you spoke to this, but the missed votes, I mean, that's only a small fraction of the 30,000 people. You know, the 4,000 that missed votes is a fraction of the 30,000 that came out to vote by paper. So, I mean, whether it's paper or whether it's kiosk, I think the important part is having a place for people to go and cast their vote and have that assistance there. I think that's the most important part. But it is an end of an era, and there are a lot of people, and I just want to note this, there's a lot of people that for generations and generations you've gone and you've marked your X on a paper ballot and stuck it in a box, and there's a lot of tradition, a lot of history, a lot of ritual around that, and I think we just got to recognize that this is a change, but that for some it will be. Yeah, you've talked about this. Not everybody's going to love this new system. Thank you.
And through the mayor, the deputy mayor, part of that ritual you talk about is people wanting to go to a voting station. I brought my children with me last time, went and voted as well. So we are trying to be as sensitive as possible to that and to be able to provide those locations as appropriately as possible, while still moving forward with the larger way that people do vote within the organization. So I appreciate that point, and that's part of where we are trying to make sure we put a ton of emphasis on the communication path that we have for this upcoming election early and to make sure people are prepared for it. As you said, I don't think everybody will be thrilled about this, and we're trying to do our best.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. No more names on the list. Perhaps we should have the question. And it's a show of hands. All in favor of approving the motion, and that motion is passed. Ian and Liam, thank you very much for the great dialogue and the report itself. Colleagues, this brings us to item 14, motions. There are none of those. Then item 15 is in camera. And before I seek a motion to go in camera, I wonder if someone would want to test the minutes, please. Councillor Daigle-Gammon.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I was wondering if we could test the minutes, that the in-camera, in-private minutes of May 25th, 2026 be approved as circulated.
Seconded by Councillor Hartling. All those in favor, show of hands, please. And the minutes are approved. Thank you very much. And is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Steele. So we'll just give the clerk a moment to prepare the room. Okay, thank you, colleagues. We are back in open session, and I'm going to ask Councillor Daigle Gammon to ratify with the public motion 15.2, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that the Executive Standing Committee 1 adopt the recommendations as outlined in the private and confidential report dated June 15th, 2026, and 2, direct that the private and confidential report dated June 15th, 2026 be maintained private and confidential.
I missed it. Okay, seconded by Councillor Steele there. And Laura, is that a hand vote as well? Yeah. All those in favor, show of hands, please. And that is approved. Thank you very much. Beg your pardon. That brings us to item 16, added items, of which there are none. Item 17, notices of motion, colleagues. Not seeing any. It says here the date of the next meeting is August 24th, 2026. We are having a special meeting at the beginning of council tomorrow morning. So if you would like to participate in that, please be present at, well, you will be there anyway because it's your job. At 9:30. Excuse me. And with that, is there a motion to adjourn? Councillor Steele, thank you so much.